Hi guys, welcome back to my channel and welcome to my June reading wrap up. I completed reading 5 books total in the month of June, and as far as the genre breakdown goes, I read 3 romances and 2 thrillers. I will say one of the romances leans a little bit literary fiction, and then one of the thrillers that I read has some horror elements to it, but I'll definitely get into more details on that when I talk about those 2 books. June was a little bit of a wake-up call for me in terms of realizing I have fallen off track a little bit when it comes to meeting my reading goals. In my defense though, the end of May and then just the whole month of June have been the busiest times of the year so far for me. I'm also partially blaming Love Island because I'm not a TV girly at all, but it has just consumed so much of my time. I'm now watching an hour almost every single night of the week. So those are definitely a couple of the reasons I've fallen off a little bit, but the month of July is looking a lot less chaotic in terms of my calendar. So I'm hoping to pick up a lot more books and get back on track. But I am very excited to share my thoughts on the 5 books that I read in the month of June. So let's hop right into the wrap up. So the first book that I read in June is actually part of a short story collection of thrillers for Amazon. I read The ExWives Club by Sally Hepworth. Sally Hepworth is one of my favorite thriller authors, and this is one of the first years in a while that she hasn't put out a full-length novel. So I was excited to at least get a little something from her. And I was also just excited to read a short story because at this point I was like, okay, I'm behind on my reading goals. I'm feeling a little slumpy. I just needed something quick and easy to finish, and this definitely was that. So in the ExWives Club, we're following our main character Ian, who is a celebrity chef who has his own restaurant, and one morning he is found dead in the kitchen of his restaurant. And the 3 main suspects are 3 of his ex-wives who actually have a very interesting dynamic. They meet once a week and dine at Ian's restaurant together. So they're the main suspects. It's a whodunit. We're getting different excerpts from people who work in the restaurant, people who frequent the restaurant, trying to find out who murdered Ian. I ended up giving this short story 3.5 stars. I really liked the premise. I was hooked right away. I found the characters very fascinating. I really loved the restaurant setting. If anyone has any recommendations for thrillers specifically set at a restaurant, I would love to know and read more thrillers set in a restaurant because I thought it was just a really cool backdrop for this thriller. I will say I did not guess the reveal. I had lots of predictions and I ended up not being correct, but I found what actually did happen to be a little bit anticlimactic, so it was a little bit of a letdown, but it was just a quick, easy, short story that I enjoyed in the moment, but a lot of the details are kind of escaping me, so it's not really anything that's gonna have a lasting impact or stick with me. But I love Sally Hepworth. Like I said, I'll read everything from her, and this was an enjoyable one. So if you want a quick, easy thriller to binge, I would recommend it for that. And then I finally finished reading Great Big Beautiful Life by Emily Henry. This is her latest release that came out at the end of April. It was on my TBR in the month of May, and I didn't finish it, but I finally finished it up mid-June. In this book, we follow Alice and Hayden. They are both writers, and they're competing for the same job of being able to write the biography of this famous heiress named Margaret Ives. She has been hidden away from the public for years. No one knows where she is, what she's been up to, and they are both kind of on like a trial period, interviewing Margaret, getting to know her, and Margaret is gonna pick which one of them is gonna get the chance to write her biography. And Alice and Hayden could not be more different from one another. Alice is a lot more sunshiny. She's not as established in her writing career. She's still trying to get her big break. She's hoping this could be it, but she's very personable and very friendly, so she's hoping she can be someone Margaret trusts and can confide in. Hayden, on the other end, is a little bit more aloof, a little bit standoffish, but he is well established in his writing career. He's won a Pulitzer Prize before, so there's definitely kind of like a suspenseful mystery aspect in terms of who will Margaret pick to write her biography, as well as what is going on in Margaret's life, why she's been hidden away from the public, what really happened, how she got to be where she is today. And then there is a romance between Hayden and Alice. So a little bit literary fiction, a little bit mystery even, but mostly I would say this is true Emily Henry romance. And I loved this one a lot. I gave it 4.75 stars. This one took me a little bit to get into. It definitely took getting past like like the setup and the background before it felt like a true Emily Henry book. I really appreciate that she branched out and did something different though. It was really interesting to read that from her, and I feel like it paid off. I really saw her talent shine through in this one. Once we got into Alice and Hayden's dynamic and the banter and seeing them be like the grumpy sunshine dynamic, I was like, okay, it feels like a true Emily Henry romance now. I was in it, and I've heard people say that they definitely prefer like one part of the story over the other. Some people preferred the romance and didn't enjoy the chapters where Margaret was being interviewed in her story, but I disagree. I thought both elements to the book were strong. I found Margaret's story to be so fascinating. I was so gripped by it, and then I loved the romance between Alice and Hayden too. I was so gripped by that as well. So there really wasn't one part to the book that I liked more. I thought both elements were done equally well, and I enjoyed both of them the same. This book definitely had moments where it was feeling like a 5-star to me. Going in, I wasn't sure how I would feel just because this is getting a lot of mixed reviews because it's so different from other Emily Henry books. But I feel like Emily Henry and her books are just ones you have to read for yourself because people have different favorites. People rank her books all across the board, so I never really know how I might feel based on other people's opinions. I kind of just have to see for myself, and this one ended up working out a lot better for me, I think, than it has for other people. I think the reason I didn't give it the full 5 stars is because when I would put this book down, it did take some convincing for me to have to like get in the mood to want to read it again. I wasn't like completely enthralled with the story and the characters. Once I was reading, I was like, okay, yeah, I love this a lot more than I remembered, but when I put the book down, it's not one that I found myself like thinking about. I didn't feel super swept up when I wasn't reading the book, so that's really the only thing keeping me from giving it a 5-star rating. But when I was reading it, I had moments where I felt that. It was just more so when I put the book down, I wasn't really dying to pick it back up again, but when I was reading it, I was having the best time. So I thoroughly enjoyed this one. I would say it sits somewhere in the middle for me in terms of ranking Emily Henry's books. People We Meet on Vacation is my #1. I would say a little under that is Funny Story. Those were both 5 stars for me from Emily Henry. This one probably sits a little bit under that, and then at the bottom I would put Beach Read and Book Lovers. I still have not read Happy Place. It's on my TBR. I need to read it soon, but I really enjoyed this one. Definitely gave some Evelyn Hugo vibes, which I was a little afraid it would feel too similar to that book, but it didn't. It felt like its own thing, just gave the same vibes as Evelyn Hugo. So I think if you enjoyed that one, you would enjoy this one. So really enjoyed it, would recommend it, but I think it's one you just have to read for yourself because I don't think it will work for everyone, just because it is quite different from Emily Henry's other books. But at its core, when we get to the romance, it does feel like true Emily Henry banter and romance. So take my review with a grain of salt. I think this is one you'll just have to try out for yourself to see if it works for you. Then I read All Roads Lead Here by Mariana Zapata. I read a couple books from MZ now. One of them I really enjoyed, the other one not as much, so I went into this one not really sure how I would feel, but kind of knowing that this is one of her fan favorite books. So I went in with pretty neutral expectations, I would say. In this book, we follow our main character, Aurora. She has just ended a long-term relationship with her celebrity musician partner, and she is going to Pagosa Springs, Colorado, where she actually lived when she was younger and grew up there. And it's kind of bittersweet for her. She's excited to be back, but it's also where her late mother passed away. So some mixed emotions going back. She ends up renting this apartment from a very grumpy landlord named Tobias Rhodes. He is a single father, and they definitely get off on the wrong foot. There's a little bit of a miscommunication about the living situation, but eventually her sunny disposition thaws away at his icy exterior, and they get to know each other, and it's a very, very slow burn relationship building up into a romance, and I enjoyed it. I gave it 3.75 stars. Mariana Zapata definitely has a formula. I find myself picking up on similar things in her books, just with like different characters and different settings, but it feels like the same kind of situations over and over, which doesn't completely work for me, but I know her writing style works for a lot of people. I enjoyed this one. I think my favorite part was the setting. I loved the outdoorsy vibes. I loved the scenes of them hiking. I actually read this right before I went on a trip out west, so it really got me in the mood for like the hiking national park kind of vibes, and that was definitely one of my favorite parts of the book. I really enjoyed the relationships in here. I liked the family relationships. I liked seeing Rhodes with his son, and then the relationship that Aurora formed with him. I really liked liked the friendships. I will say I don't think the romance was my favorite part of this book at all. I liked it, but it wasn't anything that I was like super obsessed with, dying for them to be together, felt like they were soulmates. I enjoyed them, but I don't know. I feel like Mariana Zapata's romance sometimes feels a little bit platonic to me just because it is such a slow burn and we only get like crumbs. I think maybe if we got Rhodes's perspective as well, that would make me buy into it a little bit more, but it just doesn't feel fully romantic to me. But there definitely were things about the book that I was invested in. Like I mentioned, some of those other relationships outside of the romance. It definitely had a lot of depth. It touched a lot on Aurora's grief and her coming to terms with losing her mother. I will say there were a few cheesy things in here, like a lot of repetition that kind of drove me insane. One of the things being Aurora referring to Rhodes's son as her favorite teenager. I'm like, really? Why is that the term being used to describe him? Let's just call him like his name or Rhodes's son. It was just a little bit odd to me. I didn't love that. And then when it would refer to Rhodes as like my landlord, my grumpy landlord, like let's just call him his name or like another term of endearment. I didn't always love the titles that were given to certain people, but just some cheesy parts, not enough to make me like really dislike it, but not my new favorite romance. I think again, there were other relationships outside of the romance and the setting that I enjoyed a lot more than things that I think other people like about this book. So I don't think MZ is going to be like a favorite romance author for me after trying a few of her books. I would read more from her, but she definitely has a formula and it doesn't completely click with me in terms of her writing style, but I did have a good time with this one overall. The next book I read is the thriller I talked about earlier that has a few horror elements to it, and that is Julie Chan is Dead by Leanne Zhang. I listened to this one on audio and I've just been seeing this one go around, and when people describe it sounds so interesting. So basically in this book we're following identical twin sisters, Julie and Chloe, and they were kind of separated at a young age after their parents tragically died. Julie ends up going to live with her aunt, who is this like horrible stingy lady, takes money from Julie, so Julie just does not have the best upbringing, is not really happy with her life. And then Chloe on the other hand gets adopted by this wealthy white family, going on lavish vacations, ends up becoming an influencer and then a household name, and Julie is constantly getting mistaken for Chloe. And the sisters don't really keep in touch with one another until one day Julie gets a phone call from Chloe. Chloe sounds like she's in trouble, so when she goes to investigate, turns out Chloe is dead. So Julie decides she's gonna take over Chloe's identity, pretend that it's her that actually died, and she's gonna try and get some tea and insight into this influencer lifestyle and find out a little bit more about what went down with Chloe. I really enjoyed this one. I gave it 3.75 stars. I heard it described as Yellowface meets Bunny, and I feel like that is extremely accurate, the perfect way to describe this book. I love both of those things, so I was thoroughly expecting to love this one, which I did, but I think I liked the premise and the idea of it more than I liked the execution. It definitely started out strong, hooked me right away, but I think the pacing at times was a little bit odd. I think we spent a lot of time on certain things that I think could have been brushed over more quickly, and then we like flew through certain things that I thought we were gonna spend more time with and I wanted more details on. So the pacing didn't always work. When it came to this friend group and the influencers, it was hard to keep track of all the characters because they literally feel like clones of one another, which I think was kind of part of the point. But at the end, I did kind of wish I had a better grasp on who was who because of certain things that happened. It definitely got very weird around the 75% mark when the horror element started to kick in, and I was afraid it was just gonna turn into like a mess and be this huge convoluted storyline that just didn't make any sense. But it ended up reeling things back in, and I really liked the way everything wrapped up. I thought it was done really, really nicely, and I really loved the ending. I thought the commentary on influencer culture was so good and so well done, and I had a great time with this one. I think there were just certain moments where I wish we would have gotten more details on, certain things that it spent a lot of time on that I wish were less talked about, but overall a good one. Again, if you like Yellowface, if you like Bunny, this felt like a mix of those two things without being like copy and paste and very much its own thing, so I would definitely recommend it. And the last book I read in June is another romance. It's Wild and Wrangled by Lila Sage. This This is the last book in the Rebel Blue Ranch series, and this is Cam and Dusty's book. And at the beginning of the book, we see Cam is getting married. It's her wedding day, except she ends up getting left at the altar by the groom. And then it is Dusty who is there for her, spends the day with her, helps her out, and they are now in this situation where they're going to be living in the same city for the first time in a while. And we see that they have a complicated past. It seems like they were together, but then obviously things didn't work out and they drifted apart, so we're learning why. And it is very much a second chance romance for the two of them. And I gave this one 3.75 stars, which is the same rating I've given to every single book in this series except for book 1. I gave 4 stars. Done and Dusted was definitely my favorite of this whole series, but overall I have really enjoyed my time. I love the like western small town cowboy vibe of these books. They're very quick, easy, bingeable reads. These books are set in the Jackson Hole, Wyoming area, which is where I took a trip to last month. So reading this around the same time as I was going on my trip definitely put me in the right mood for it and was just like the perfect thing to read. I loved kind of seeing them go on the same hikes that I was going on my trip, so that made me, I think, enjoy things a little bit more. I think Cam and Dusty's story definitely has a lot of depth and heart to it, probably the most out of all the books in this series, I would say. I feel like their dynamic was complicated and it made a lot of sense why things didn't work out and they were trying again. I know sometimes people say they don't like second chance romances because if it didn't work out the first time around, like usually it's for a good reason and they can't root for the characters getting together a second time. But in this case, I think it was very valid why it didn't work out the first time around, and I was rooting for them to be together and work things out the second time. The lack of communication in this book definitely frustrated me. Normally I don't mind miscommunication because it feels very realistic, but I found it very frustrating on Cam's end how she couldn't just like open up with Dusty, who was someone who understood her and was trusting and was very patient with her. I felt like she could have been an open book around him, and instead she was just very closed off, and I didn't love those parts. I wanted her to be more receptive to him, and we definitely got there, but I didn't like how much convincing it took. I felt like, not that she necessarily owed him more explanation, but like I felt like she should have given him more and he was giving more effort in than she was, and it didn't always feel balanced and equal. But overall, very cute, very sweet. Really enjoyed this series and would recommend it as a whole if you're looking for western small town vibe cowboy romances. And I cannot wait for Lila Sage's next book coming out, I think in September or October. It is a paranormal romance and it sounds so good, so I will be getting that on release day. Really enjoyed my time with this series though. Sad that it's over, but glad that I read it and would recommend it to you guys. So those are the 5 books that I read in June. That's going to conclude my June reading wrap up. Let me know down below in the comments if you've read any of the books I read, what your thoughts are on them, how your reading month in June was, what you liked, what you didn't like. Tell me everything down below. I would love to chat with you guys in the comments. If you enjoyed the wrap up, be sure to give this video a thumbs up and make sure you are subscribed to my channel so you don't miss out on any future book videos from me. I would love to have you guys here. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you all so very soon in my next one. Bye guys.